Don't be shy. Use your lady things to jiggle. Use your man cash to wiggle. Come on, you can shake it. Yeah. Grab a drink with a crazy straw and suck on it. Anything goes at Paratopia. And welcome.
Paratopia, welcome to our first ever Paratopia special. This is actually a conversation that we had after the Deb Kauble interview. So it's Jeff and Lee Townsend and myself. And it picks up with me asking Lee about his own hero's journey, where he literally went out alone into the dark of night, into the woods, to face his fears. Take it away, us! Lee, you know, we're talking about dealing with this in the dark and all this, and you literally went out into the dark, into the woods, alone to deal with this. Was this your moment of, fuck it, I don't know what's going on?
Pretty much. I said, I don't even care anymore. I'm tired of being owned by this. I'm tired of being to the point where I can only sleep 2 and 3 hours a night because I'm so engrossed in finding out what the hell is going on and coming into a point of actually having some sightings, some events, whatever, and being so totally afraid, just as we were talking before. You sit down in front of them and you tell, piss off, I'm not going to believe you. Well, yeah, that's great to theorize about that until you sit down face to face and then, see if you got the cojones to do it. I was engrossed and gripped by the fear. So I said, I have to do this. And I went up there. I went up to, the Southern Catskills, and I found a little spot, and I pitched a tent, and I sat there and said, well, I'm going to spend the night. I'm going to spend the night alone on the mountain, and then I'll get the inheritance if I wake up in the morning. So, and in a sense, I did.
Well, did you lost your sense of fear about this as a result of this, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
Now, was that you losing your sense of fear, or was it taken away from you? Great
question. All I can report what I reported in the prior show. I went to sleep. I was woken up in the middle of the night, and I seeing a light moving in the sky outside, through the sheer tent, and this is the most oddball thing about the whole thing is I said to myself, "Oh, it's you." Mm-hmm. And to this day, I don't know why I said that or for what reason, because I didn't know, consciously know who or what it was. But as soon as I said that, I was just zapped into another place in my mind. I was still inside the tent. I know that. I wasn't transported aboard a spaceship or anything like that. At least that wasn't my perception. But I had a vision in front of me, and it was all symbols and all very, very, very quickly flipping symbols, and it was a whole matrix of them. And they were all different. They never stayed long enough for me to consciously pick up, or I couldn't tell you what. It might have been circles and squares and crosses or whatever, but it was like a really, really, really fast flip movie, and that's all I remember out of the whole thing. And I woke up the next morning, and I was like cured of fear. That's the only thing I can say. That may have been internally generated. It might have been externally generated. Same thing as Deb said earlier on the show. I don't know.
Well, were you aware of yourself in your body as this was happening?
It was almost like a lucid dream, if you will. If you want to, I was in that lucid state.
I mean, people talk about downloads. Do you feel like you were downloaded?
In a sense, I think that's a great analogy. I do. I really do. And we know enough we know very little about the way the mind really works, but we know enough to know that the consciousness doesn't assimilate information anywhere as nearly as quickly as the unconscious mind does. So whatever message, whether it was generated from beings from Zeta Reticuli or, generated from a deeper part of myself or, generated from God Almighty or Satan himself, I don't know. All I know is I felt as if I was given a gift, and that was a loss of fear.
And when that happened, did you ever question yourself, like, why? Because, one of the things that the Jacques Vallée book pointed out to me was that there doesn't seem to be a direct cause-effect with this stuff. So why would one cause the other? Did that ever occur to you? Like, you've always thought of this in terms of the beings, right?
I'll tell you, Jeremy,
here's this weird download, and now you're not afraid of the beings and the whole situation.
Right. Well, I don't know. All I know is cause and effect. I can't put the two together. As I can't say that seeing this little baseball scoreboard flipping images this download or whatever you want to call it caused the absence of fear, and it may have been just the act of spending the night alone and having the balls to do it in the first place, which caused a cessation of fear. I don't know that that's the case. I couldn't tell you. However, and I did write to Whitley about it, and this was about a mile or two from his cabin where this occurred, and this was during a period of time where he was having regular contact, regular goings on, and he indicated that he thought he had the feeling that they were there checking me out, whatever that means.
Well, you'd had experiences before this, right?
Yes, but nothing, and there again, nothing that I consciously, that I have any kind of fully conscious recollection of. I have been regressed and been hypnotized. I was taken back to an incident once when I was about 8 years old, and apparently whatever it was that occurred when we got up, I got right into the place. I was, you could hear my voice. I was speaking as an 8-year-old I was back at the 8-year-old place. And then when we got up to the event in particular, I just kind of spontaneously jumped out of whatever hypnosis state I was in. And I think I surmise that was as a protective mechanism, that it either I didn't need to know, didn't have to know, didn't want to know, or whatever. But we never actually got to a conscious recollection. I do have flashes of being in places where I don't ever remember being for a certain incidents, and I have a real affinity, or I really got struck, and this is as many people have, who are drawn into this whole thing, the resonance with the face on the cover of Communion, although that was not exactly right, as there was something wrong. There was something wrong with the angles on the being on the cover of that, but just the eyes was enough to really get me thinking.
Well, was that the thing? Was that the event where it sort of made you flash back and see patterns with these snippets of memory, or did you always sort of know? Like, you remembering at the time, let's say, when you were 8, do you remember waking up the next day or whatever it was and remembering something weird, or did that all just come together?
Yes, and I'll tell you, what I saw when I was 8 was basically the tops of heads through a tent, there again, camping outside, and seeing, it was an old canvas tent at that time, and there was the screen window, and I remember seeing the tops of little bald heads, like 3 or 4 of them, and I have somewhere along the lines a description. I see in my mind's eye a picture of a hand, and it is very distinctive, and it is definitely not human. And I will spare the details of what it looked like, because I use that as a baseline. Yeah.
Well, I'm just asking. Do you remember? Did you remember that from 8 years old onward, or did that come back to you as like a flashback at some point?
From near as I can recall, Jeremy, that has always been with me. But it was nothing that really resonated as a real oddball question. I would say maybe the heads I remembered early on, but the hand I don't think that I did.
So what was your
until later on
thinking on this? Like when you sort of, did you put these little snippets of things together and go, all right, what's going on here? Demons, aliens, delusional? Like what was
pretty much? And the catalyst for that would have been probably around 88, 89, something like that, around the time that I first got in touch with communion. Mm-hmm. And then I started to look. Oh yeah, I've had things happen after, and I've had an anomalous event, a sighting event, that I reported to the police. I remember the event clear as day of what led up to it anyway. I remember the sighting. I remember where I was. I can tell you what lane of the road I was in. I can tell you, where I turned, and I know everything up to a point. And then I have little flashes of memory. And then the next thing I know, I'm like getting all excited saying, I have to report this. So I drove to the nearest police station, not realizing it was like 45 or an hour and 15 minutes. It was later, a lot later at night. If I was leaving at 8 o'clock and only took me 15 minutes to get to the police station, it was like 10 or 10:30 by the time I got to the police station saying, have you had any reports of UFOs tonight? No, sir. Okay, bye.
What about after your camping trip? Was there anything after that happened to you?
I'm trying to think of the event, and I'm trying to recall if the event with the birds in the fog bank, if that occurred before or
I thought that
after.
was before.
I think it was before. Yeah. No, I don't think I've really been plagued afterwards, put it that way.
Well, I think that, again, going back to the more you give, the more you get.
Yeah.
I think after that thing, I remember distinctly that someone called us up with some kind of report down in Calvert Cliffs, mm-hmm. Maryland. Mm-hmm. And I called you up and said, "Are you ready?" And you're like, "Dude, I'm done. I'm done." I'm like, really, you really are done. I know you said that, but you really are. And you're like, "Yeah, I'm just kind of like not." So you after that, you completely detached from the whole thing.
I went into semi-retirement. Well, actually, I went into retirement on the field.
Yeah. And and then since coming back into this, mm-hmm. Since that point, you've had a couple of little weird
things nothing that would constitute a sighting.
No. The one thing.
Well, except for that one thing, no. I would occasionally, and I described this to Jeff early on, back in the springtime. I was living in another state, and I would go out back of my apartment. I lived on a ground floor apartment, and I would go outside and look up at the sky, and there would be a light show up in the sky. Okay, big deal. Lights show up in the sky all the time. But this flashed. It was very large and very bright, and I would say probably in the order of maybe like a -5 or -6 magnitude. A really, really bright light. Orange light, pop in, and then go out. Almost like, hi there, just checking up.
Right.
Yeah. We're still here. Whenever you're ready, and this is going to sound really weird. Now this
on this show?
Yeah,
no,
right.
Impossible.
I was, and this probably the last occurrence that struck me as being really unusual was seeing a bird disappear right in front of me. He was flying, and then I didn't look away. I didn't look away at all because I was seeing this bird flying across the highway going, he's really low, and he's going to get hit by a truck. And he didn't get hit by a truck because as soon as he got in front of my field of vision, and I watched it the whole time, it wasn't there anymore. It's not like I glanced away and glanced back. I looked at it, and I saw it there and then not there.
You got a whole thing with birds and highways, don't you?
I got this bird thing, I guess.
I had a similar thing happen in Gettysburg, except I don't know what it was that was flying, but it disappeared in front of me.
Yeah. This
I also had, this is interesting, Barbara Three Crow just told me of an incident of I don't remember, it was some like lucid dream or something she was having. I think involving grasshoppers. And she woke up and there was a grasshopper sitting on her chest.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Sounds like your mouse.
Yeah,
No?
well, exactly. I mean, and then we go back to my mouse. Now, did I really see a mouse even the first time? Was that real? Because I've never seen a mouse since. I've never seen a mouse before in this apartment. Maybe that, too, was a disappearing mouse. You know what I mean? Like, I just assumed that I saw a real mouse that, for some reason, walked into the center of the living room and just sat there in a way that mice don't do unless they're completely sick. And then when I got up, it scattered off, and then I never saw it again. And then that night, I had this really, like, I just kept obsessing over it, because it's like, once you lose something like that, it's like, oh, crap. Where did it go? Now I've got a mouse in the house,
Right.
So I have this really lucid dream involving, like, bugs or something in a jar, but then the mouse. And there's something about it that just kept getting so real and real and real. And I'm lying on my right side, and I feel like sort of come out of my head a mouse, and I can feel the weight of it and the pitter patter of its feet, and it runs across my head. And I wake up and I see it leap and it jumps, and I wake up and I see this thing and it just dissolves in the air.
Wow.
And I just assumed that was because I was so obsessing over this real incident, but maybe that first incident wasn't even real. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's weird.
Yeah, that is. I mean, it's okay. Now, first we're from flying saucers. Now we're to disappearing animals.
Well, I just like everybody to make a mental note that you have birds, Jeremy has mice, and I have a guy in a death shroud. So this thing treats me like the little bitch that I am.
Well, rock, paper, scissors.
Jesus Christ.
But I think this completely goes into Jeff's, this thing comes out of you and then falls on the floor. I mean, I think that was sort of what that experience is like, yeah, there is this link, maybe in our great concentration on something or obsessively thinking about something over and over again, maybe in some weird way you can make it fall on the floor, at least for a limited time, and then it dissolves.
The metaphysicians will tell you that, intent is what sets in motion the mechanics of creation. So, there may be something to it. I don't know. Can we empirically prove that scientifically? I sincerely doubt it.
Yeah.
And $1 billion to the person that can prove it,
Well, go back to dear old Terrence with his DMT tykes, singing objects into existence right in front of his face. And then they're emphatically saying, do it. And, and he's like, then out comes this glossolalia-like singing, and you're doing it. I think, to me, I mean, when I walk away from that, that's the message, maybe that's just my own preconceived notion. It's like, can we sing things into existence? Can thought be our song to make things appear, to manifest? Like, are we able to do that? And we're just so steeped in materialist society that's already in the brain. You can't do that.
No.
You can't do that. Now, by the same token, I'm not going to go up on the roof of my Cape Cod and jump off saying, I can fly. I know I can do it. I know I can fly.
Can I have your guitar first?
No.
Okay.
I know I can fly. I mean, that's not where we're going.
This is the problem that I keep seeing. We, for the last interview on the Black Fridays, interviewed Jay Widener. Who was all about that, who's all about you create your own reality, and if you train hard enough, you can levitate giant rocks. How do you think they built the pyramids? That sort of thing.
No.
And it's like, well, if that's true, why don't you do it? Like, why does nobody who preaches this stuff ever say that they personally can do it? They just say that humans can, and isn't that great? It's like, well, do it.
I don't know that. I mean, that's where I disconnect from it and go, no. Again, you're trying to fit it into something. I don't think it's something that we can overtly control. I think just the way Jeremy's mouse happened is what I'm talking about. You're in an altered state at that point. And I think that is one of the requirements or the demands is that you've got to, you can't do that in this space, in this, I talked about an experience I had waking up, seeing faces of people like right here,
Right.
like it was in my face.
Right.
And these people were people I worked with, people I've known, and they're like, you're all the same. You're all this one thing. And in my chest right here, I feel, yeah, that's it. That's it. I got it. And then, but now I think of that, I don't feel that epiphany at all. And in fact, I don't even feel that. Mm-hmm. But in that state, I felt that. And again, it's the bringing it back.
Right.
How do you bring it back? Can you?
I mean, it's quite possible that the answer is pretty much something that all of these different elements seem like they're mutually exclusive, but there's some common thread that does indicate that it is all connected.
Yeah.
I don't know what.
Who the hell knows? Who knows?
Yeah.
Well, I mean,
so in the end,
one connected thread is that you're in a state where your wake state, brain chemistry, and your dream chemistry are colliding, right? Or working in tandem somehow.
Yes.
So that's it. I mean, you're bringing out unconscious stuff into consciousness, or dream realm stuff into the room.
Right.
And the second that your brain goes right back to complete normalcy, well, you can't see it anymore.
You know, you're getting into, and we're talking about the discussion that's probably best served by the cosmologists and cosmogonists, but, and really getting into what is the nature of reality. And this all might be pointing us to that, and pointing us to asking the right questions about it. And I think we find that once we do get to an answer, it's quite likely that these answers are so personal, it doesn't matter if it's shared. It doesn't matter. You're not going to sell a book about it, because that is entirely, completely a moot point. It doesn't matter by that time. Yeah. However, these are the catalysts. These are the things that are the genesis of the thought process that, they do have strangeness in common. Most of them do.
Yeah.
Where does it take us from that? I just keep going back to that, and that's why I say it's an intensely personal thing. And if you go, Jeff, with the concept of saying, okay, well, you believe, you have this understanding that all these people are the same, we're all the same. Well, and that still very well may be valid. We're just different facets of it. So there's some little demarcation between those elements of it.
Well, when I talked to Jeremy about that, he's like, I said, why don't I get that now? Mm-hmm. Because why can't I feel like that now? And of course, that whole thing was also in conjunction with this feeling of receding out of me, or receding into something else, with a noise, like a in my right ear.
My first impression is, okay, well, is your feeling then is going to be the arbiter of that reality?
I mean, what's weird about it is that it felt like there was something on the right-hand side that wanted to recede me out, okay, as bizarre as that feeling was, that I didn't like, and that I would continuously grope to go, or I could pull myself back out of that. Right. I could go, no. Right. And get back to being on the bed again. I didn't see the back of my head. I didn't see me and Lisa. I know it was just receding into blackness. Okay.
Been there.
On the right came music. After seeing the faces came music. And I was like, wow, that's a really good song. I should totally go downstairs and write this up. And as I'm thinking about that, it's pulling me backwards again. So it was almost like, look at this.
Right.
Come here.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
It was, and I was like, no. And after a while, it seemingly just gave up.
Resistance is futile.
Right. Yeah. I mean,
let me throw this idea out. That perhaps the reason that you could feel it then and you can't feel it now is because you weren't you then. You were this other state of mind. And in that other state of mind, I mean, again, just look to dreams as the analogy. Everything is you in the dream, right? So if you're in that state of oneness or lack of separation between objects and people and all of that, then yeah, the big revelation, oh my God, this is all one thing. This is all me. This, whatever that is not your reality when you come back to quote unquote reality.
Well, didn't Einstein say that the universe is the field of infinite probabilities? Okay. So dreams are no less real than our real current waking state, if you accept that premise.
Yeah.
So...
if you never wake up.
Yeah.
And Jeremy asked me at the time, well, what feels more like you? That, laying in the bed receding, or you now? And I got to say, I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
I think the thing laying in the bed receding was more animalistic to me because I felt placated and extracted. And I said, no,
you mean out of control?
Out of control. More free.
Without an ego, but
more free.
Right.
And I can say that when I felt like the receding and the blackness receding into the dark, I told you on the phone right the day after it happened, I said, it felt like, am I dying? Is that what this is? I'm dying?
I've had exactly the
and you
same
said,
experience.
well, maybe it is a kind of dying.
It's a figurative.
But
yeah,
what worries me about that is that my mother has pernicious anemia. Before she was diagnosed with pernicious anemia, she was very, very sick. Unbeknownst to me, as I just moved out of the house, and I don't know if they kept it from me how sick she was or she just put on, but she said I was laying. She said the most vivid memory that she has of being that sick, that the point where she told me I thought I was going to die, was laying in bed and receding into blackness. And she said I would struggle not to go because I thought if I go too far in this, I'm not coming back out of here. And that's what it feels like.
I don't know if I ever related the story to you. I had a similar thing occurred to me where I was about 16 years old and I was sick and I was in bed and I was laying on my side, and this is kind of gross. I started feeling that receding. I was going away, and I was feeling like everything. I was losing all sensation.
That's it.
All input, all sensory input was going away.
Right.
And it freaked me out, and I jolted myself back in. And as soon as I did that, I basically threw up blood all over my wall.
Really?
Yeah. I had burst a blood vessel up in my sinuses, and it was just leaking down. I was bleeding profusely down the. They took me to the hospital and all that stuff too. But I went out freaked out. I thought I was dying.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's what it feels like, and that's exactly right, because I remember that my legs was like I have really bad. I have a bad way with physical sensations. Like when, Jeremy and I did the mushroom just to find out what it was, what it's like, what's the similarity, what's the dissimilarity. And that was what I had the biggest problem with. Like my hands, I would look at my hands and I was moving them, but I can look at my hand now and go, that's my hand. And I feel this brain-body connection to it.
Right.
But then I didn't.
Disconnect.
And that would freak me out. And that's what I felt like when I started the recession.
Yep.
I felt like I don't like this. And where am I going? What am I going to see? That's the next thing. It's like, boogity, boogity, boogity. What am I going to see?
Well, as far as I got into it before I totally freaked, and maybe it was the bleeding that made me kind of wake up or something, but I felt it was a complete and total void.
Yeah.
I was still real.
Right.
But there was nothing around.
Right.
Black, total darkness, no sensation. It was just
I hate the word oblivion, but that's it.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. And I have no idea.
Hopefully that's just the curtain.
Well, and I'll tell you what's interesting about that experience was it was after Jeremy and I had this really long phone conversation to where for years he has talked about things with consciousness that I just can't get my head around. And finally this one day, something clicked in our conversation. I'm like, now I get what he's talking about. Now I get where it's coming from. And then that night, boom, there it was.
Oh, that night?
It was that night.
Wow. Cool. The student was ready.
And yeah, and
isn't it interesting that just a final, just sort of deep understanding of something is the trigger to new stuff? I mean, how weird is that? Just think about that on the face of it. How weird is that? It's not even the power of intention or doing any sort of work. It's just like it's the opposite, really. It's sort of a sigh. It's like, I get that.
Yeah.
And now the next thing, because once you've answered the question, you go on to the next thing, and that's how you know. Most of these people who claim to have these answers have not answered anything because they haven't moved beyond this stuff. You know, that's how you know it's inauthentic. They're still dealing with it.
Yeah, yeah. But then you're an elitist asshole.
Well, again, it's like these are the subtle like problems of language, right? It's like we have the same language to describe everything. So yeah. I mean, how does an authentic person not look like a pompous douche? I mean, you can't. You can't. I mean, any more than like the shaman can't not look like a schizophrenic.
Yeah, well, and might I add that, you know, by the same token, to talk about this with complete honesty is to be thought a fool, unquote. I guess maybe this would be our negative, point, is that when you bring up the deeper aspects of this and you start talking about stuff that normal people don't really expose or talk about, then you're you're throwing out wild ass theories, and I mean that's not good, right?
It's great and it's important. It's critical and crucial to ask the questions.
Yeah.
You know, whatever leads us to asking the questions, there's a bazillion stories in the Naked City, but they bring us to asking these questions. And I think this is where your show really is doing the best service to the entire community, is not to just accept this crap out of hand for all the sensationalist junk it is, but it has real meaning to it. And we don't know what that meaning is. We don't have the magic answer or anything. But I would just continue to urge your listeners and urge everybody to continue to ask, seek.
Well, and don't be afraid to throw out the wild ass theory.
Exactly.
That's the thing. I mean, I love doing it. And going back to the previous program, Whitley would say that's what this is doing. Right. It is building.
Well, I see on the chat, a lot of the chat blogs and things like that, people are poo-pooing Coast to Coast because he's just putting all these crackpots on. All he cares about doing is selling his show. Well, whoop-de-doo. He's making his own. He's making a living at doing it. But he's providing a forum where people can talk about this, and at least it's something that.
It's a gateway drug to deeper things.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So but then you look at the people who are the hardcore believers that this is it's definitely the Zetas.
Well, that's the line of demarcation in this for me. It's like that's what we have talked about so many times. It's like, how do you change the field? You don't. You start another level of inquiry.
Yes.
And then the people, then we hope, that becomes something that people get involved and participate in rather than being a player.
Yeah.
Like, let's all get together and think.
Yeah. Jeremy, I think I think you hit the nail right on the head. That was the importance of this episode, was bringing somebody who has pretty much set the baseline standard.
Right.
Said, wait a minute, hold the phone.
That ain't what's going on. That ain't what I said.
This is not what I didn't say that.
Right, yeah.
Right. Yeah.
And as far as us, what this show is doing, all I can say to that is, you're absolutely right. Yes.
Yes, it is the most important paranormal show ever in the history of.
That's right, yes. Let me go get my champagne suit on and grow a beard.
Yes, which is why less and less people will be listening to it.
Right. No, I think we're just. I think the only thing, and it is weird, like I said before, how all has progressed, But
who's going to label you as a crackpot for asking questions?
Oh, plenty.
You think?
Oh yeah.
Jerome Clark.
Yes, thanks, Jerome Clark. Yes, for all the great work that he's done, and how much I thought we'd agree upon things. It turns out we don't really agree on very much. So it's just my view of it anymore is like, that's okay, no problem, because at a certain point you've got to just draw the line yourself and go, I can't take any more of this.
Right.
Because this is not accomplishing anything for me. And so where do we go from here? And that's what me and Jeremy, when we sat down to talk about a show, we didn't want to have the common players on all the time, but we wanted to go outside and see what threads we could tug on there. I mean, that's like, it's all exploratorial here.
Sure.
That's what it is. So
well, it's like they've forgotten, it's like they've forgotten that they never answered anything, because it's like for you to say, you keep saying, gee, what is this phenomenon? To them is like they roll their eyes and they're like, we already answered it. It's aliens. Don't you get it? It's like they don't realize that that's a belief, that they didn't.
What are you, new?
Yeah, are you new, kid? Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's right. That's right.
Yeah.